Chapter 30, Volleyball, the last chapter in the book and the last chapter for the final. You have 6 chapters for your final: 21, 22, 24, 27, 28, and 30. And just like your other sports of softball and, well, we didn't do football, but we did basketball and such. You want to teach these skills to master them in the intermediate grade levels, teaching rules and strategies for volleyball, and following it up with layup games. In volleyball, we want the children to learn the basic skills properly, and the book does a good job of explaining the different basic skills for volleyball. So we want them to practice serving and passing. I would work on just underhand serving, not overhand serving. Maybe introduce it to the 5th grade if you think you have some students that may do very well already with underhand serving, and you might want to introduce overhand serving. But passing is an integral part of volleyball, so you definitely want to practice that. And as with any other activity in PE that involves an object, the students are working on hand-eye coordination and body coordination. So we want to give attention to the proper technique. This is very essential for this. So if you notice at the very first paragraph on page 706, they talk about passing, serving, and rebounding of all types. We want to mimic those volleyball skills. Blocking is an important skill, they're saying, that can be performed if they anticipate it correctly. I personally don't think that should be taught in the 3rd through 5th grade. But what I do want you to know, setting and hitting or spiking, which is also called attacking, are challenging skills for your elementary students. So I want you to know the teacher should rather spend little time on these techniques. You should not spend a lot of time on setting and spiking for the elementary age students. So as far as for instructional emphasis and sequence, if you're using an indoor facility like a basketball court, you could divide the court into 2, and therefore you would have 2 volleyball courts so they can play crosswise. So I want you to know you could lower the net to about 6 feet or less, and that will help the students to be successful because they may have a difficult time getting at the regulation height. Also, in the primary grades, they can practice handling activities related to volleyball skills such as rebounding and controlling balloons. I want you to know rebounding and controlling balloons are excellent related experiences, especially for the younger children. So balloons works really well, especially for the little ones. So for regulation volleyballs, they're of little value when you consider trying to introduce these skills, these basic skills to the kids. So I want you to know using beach balls or foam balls of comparable size will increase your success because they move slower and are of lighter weight. Even up into junior high and high school, they can have a lot of fun with beach balls. So many of your practice activities don't have to have a net. You don't need a net. So they can be even done outdoors. Now for development level 1, I want you to know your experiences at this level in grades 3 and 4 should be based on using a beach ball and culminate in the game of beach ball volleyball that we have in our book. So they're suggesting using a beach ball all through 3rd and 4th grade. I personally think in 4th grade you should introduce the regulation volleyball for that grade level because they start having volleyball in the 5th grade in most elementary schools these days. Here's a picture of the different size or different types of volleyballs that you can use. The one on the far left is from Gopher, and it's a rubberized ball. It's not a playground ball, but it is one that could be used. Then you have a nice size striped beach ball, And then the one on the right is the no sting volleyball that has a cloth material around it that their kids really like because they don't have that fear factor of hurting themselves with a regulation volleyball. For developmental level 3, your 5th grade, this is when they're saying you could actually use a volleyball trainer ball as the students mature to work with this. Try to find one where it doesn't hurt. Like I said, that no sting volleyball is a good one, or get a regulation volleyball that they would use for their 5th or 6th grade volleyball games. You want them to be able to do the basics techniques for handling high or low passes. Your most skilled students, you might introduce the overhand serve, like I talked about earlier. If you want to show how to set and spike or attack and blocking, you possibly can. It depends on your students in your PE class. But basically, you should have your focus on underhand serving and passing. Just like your other sports that we have covered, on page 706, table 30.1 has your skills that should be introduced in developmental level 2, which is on the left side, the underhand serve and simple returns. They should also have a knowledge of simple rules and rotation. On the right-hand side of this table, you see they need to definitely know how to do the forearm passing. Oh, here they say overhand serve. I like that. At least introduce it, but be flexible to where some can stay with underhand serving if they're not successful with the overhand, but introduce it to the 5th grade. Setting, now hitting and attacking, that's for your most skilled players, and blocking. That's what the asterisk is for. Developmental level 3, they definitely should know the basic game rules by now and some game strategy. Here's a continuation of table 30.1. The activities you can play with 3rd and 4th grade: beach ball volleyball, informal volleyball, shower service ball. I also like our volley tennis activity on the outline, the 10 activity outline. This is a great introduction to the students on rotation and 3 and over, because volleyball is the only sport where the ball could be hit out of bounds and still be played. No other sport is it allowed, and that's a difficult little concept for them to learn. Skills tests, a little simplified serving for development level 2, and then serving for accuracy on development level 3, and then wall volleying. Let's talk volleyball skills that are necessary for the students to learn to be successful while playing volleyball. And the first one, as you might imagine, is serving. So on page 707, I want you to know the serve is what's used to start the play, and the underhand serve is the easiest for them. But the overhand serve or the floater serve is the most effective. But again, that's something you might introduce in the 5th grade. I want you to know few students will master the overhand serve, so do not expect 100% compliance. And like I said, you could introduce it to them, but for those highly skilled students. The instructional cues for serving that I want you to know: use opposition. What are they talking about here? I've talked about the law of opposition, where you place the opposite foot of the serving hand forward, the opposite foot. So the law of opposition, use opposition. That's the foot that should be placed forward whenever you're transferring your weight from your back foot to your front foot and using the pendulum swing with your arm to serve the ball. Transfer the weight to the forward foot. That's what I was just talking about. Keep your eyes on the ball. I repeat, keep your eyes on the ball. It's human nature to take your eye off the ball and assume you're going to make good contact, but that's one of the areas that they really need to practice. Number 4, decide before the serve where to place it. Now, that's getting a little bit fancy. If we can just get the 3rd or 4th graders to hit the ball over the net, that's a success. But if you got some that are really good and you want to you really like the game of volleyball, you can work on that. And then number 5 is also important, the follow through. As I've said before in different lectures, wherever that elbow is going, that's where the ball's going. So you want a straight pendulum swing back with your arm and forward with your arm. And do not punch at the ball. So be familiar with the instructional cues for serving. What are the different types of serve? We have the underhand serve. The directions in the book are for a right-handed person, so therefore you want to step forward with your left foot. I'll have the next slide to show you that picture. And then we have the overhand serve that I want you to know. Present this serve as an option. Present it as an option for the students who have mastered is the key word, the underhand serve. So those students who have mastered the underhand serve, then those 1, 2 students, 5 students, you can pull them to the side and show them how to do the overhand serve, and while the others continue to practice the underhand serve. Passing. In your formal game of volleyball, the players typically use the forearm pass to receive the serve, and then they pass the ball to a teammate for a set. So that's what they're talking about, the forearm pass. So in your book, they say to prepare for the pass, for the forearm pass, the player moves rapidly to the spot where the ball is descending, where the ball is going down, and you lean forward, keeping your back straight. Remember, we talked about 90-degree angle. Well, you want a 90-degree angle with your thighs and your back, bending at the legs, at the knees, okay? So, what are some cues for the forearm pass on page 708 that I want you to know? Number 1, move into the path of the ball. Number 2, bend the knees. Number 3, make a table with your arms flat and your shoulders stiff. Arms flat, shoulders stiff. What do we mean by that? We want to form a flat surface. Do not let them interlock their fingers and just hit it anywhere on their knuckles. Do not let them do that. Have them form a flat surface. Number 4 says guide the ball with your shoulders, and number 5 says contact the ball with the forearms. Your hands, your forearm, but you try and form a flat surface so you can have control of where you're going to send the ball. The set is also sometimes called the overhead pass. And why did they say overhead? Because that is where you need to make contact over the head. So you want to move underneath the ball and make contact with your fingertips. Teaching the students to put their hands above their head, have their thumbs touch their little pinky, and then separate the thumb from the pinky and keep their fingers, their knuckles stiff and making contact above the head. So overhead pass or set. On page 709, I want you to know some teaching cues for the overhead pass or set. Number 1, move to the ball. Number 2, hands up and cupped with fingers spread. You do not jump. You just have your hands up and you're cupping your fingers. You spread them out a little bit. Number 3, shoulders square to the target. Number 4, push with the finger pads through the ball. Push. Now the secret there is making sure both hands make contact with the ball at the same time. And I've learned this year how the officials make that judgment call is by what happens to the ball when it leaves the person who is setting it. If there's a spin on the ball, if the ball starts spinning a little bit, then that means the setter, the person who's doing the set, did not make contact with the ball with both hands at the same exact time. And that's why they call it a violation, and then the other team gets a point. Some advanced volleyball skills I want you to be familiar with. Attacking, as we called earlier, is where you're spiking the ball, and you have to be very advanced with that. I wouldn't even really introduce it. If you do, definitely lower the net. Lower the net. There's no way they can do the regulation height. So what are some instructional and cues for the attack? You have a certain approach, 1, 2 up, knees bent, arms back, head up. Three rather, jump with the arms up. Number 4, contact the ball in front of your body, not above your head, but a little bit in front of your body. And number 5, follow through. You always want to follow through anytime you make contact with a ball. So follow through with your hand to the same side hip. So be familiar with those instructional cues to where if I have one in there that's not one of these, you can recognize it. Blocking. Blocking is another advanced skill I want you to know. Blocking involves one or more defensive, which is the receiving team, members who form a screen with their arms and hands near the net to block the attack or the spike. So the players got to jump high with their arms outstretched over their head. Their palms are facing the net and their fingers are spread, but you don't want your hands too far apart because then the ball could go in between your arms. So blocking. So these are some basic volleyball skills. Here's a picture of the underhand serve. Notice the young lady has 2 feet together and she has the ball here and she has her fist, her flat surface, and now she's transferring the weight from the back foot to the front foot. That ball's a little high up. It needs to go down about a 60-degree angle like there. You always want to make contact below the waist, below the waist. And so she's doing a good job here. The ball's already left her hand, okay, and she had that pendulum swing back and then forward. And then notice she followed through to the same side as her right shoulder, her right arm, right shoulder. So this is a good diagram for the underhand serve. On the left, we have the forearm pass position. Notice how she's forming that flat surface with her hands and her forearms, and she's looking at her hands. That's where the ball's going to make contact. She has her back pretty much straight, knees bent, okay? So that's a very good picture of how to do a forearm pass. And then to complete a set, notice this little lady on the right, she's making contact with the ball, the beach ball above her head, and notice her fingers, how they are, okay? And remember, you watch the ball after she makes contact to see if it's spinning, and not so much 3rd or 4th grade, but in 5th grade, you want to start noticing it so that they'll know how to try and start doing it correctly, especially if they love the game of volleyball. Some instructional procedures in the book that could be some helpful guides for you if you're interested in volleyball and you're not sure what to do. Number 1 talks about the serve. The serve starts the play, for every point. So it's a very critical part of the game. So therefore, you want to make sure you practice it as much as possible. They talk about 3 modifications to help the students be more successful. Serve from the center of the playing area instead of the back line. That's okay. You can do that in 3rd grade if you're going to actually do regulation volleyball and not volley tennis. The second one, allow another serve if the first is not good. That's what I believe too, especially when they're first learning how to serve. It's boring if you just keep passing the ball to the other side because they didn't serve it right, especially when they're just learning how to play the game. And then the 3rd modification, allow an assist by a team member. I don't know if I'd do that, but if you want to, you can. Number 2, to save time, instruct the players to roll the ball back to the server. No throwing, rolling. Number 3 is the one thing I want you to know for sure. Effective instruction is possible only when the players can rebound the balls from the hands and arms without pain. They don't like it hurting them and the fear factor. So, if it's a heavy ball or an underinflated ball, you want to avoid these because it takes the fun out of it. Beach balls, trainer balls are excellent for beginners. Number 4 talks about focus on the predominant instruction pattern on individual or partner work. There's numerous individual and partner activities in our book, in our chapter. Number 5, use the fist to hit balls on normal returns. Results in poor control. So true. Do not let them use their fist. I'm so glad they're bringing this out. Do not ever let them do the fist for the digs. Show them a simpler way, closed fist. if they can't get it the other way, but do not let them interlock their fingers and form a fist to return the ball. It's hard to break them of it if you can allow them to do that. And then number 6 talks about introducing the rotation plan. So they have a 6-person rotation where the front row goes to the right, the back row goes to the left. But they also show a 9-person rotation where the front row goes to the right, the middle row goes to the left, and the back row goes to the right. So a 9-man rotation, if you use 9 people, you could have 18 people playing volleyball at one time. And therefore you're utilizing a lot of students, and that's a good idea. For organizing your instructions, they talk about individual play, how you can have the students do wall rebounding about 6 feet away. And then on page 710, number 2 talks about having a spot 6 feet in front of the wall, and the player throws the ball against the wall and alternates an overhand pass with a forearm pass. Then they talk about number 3, the player throws the ball to one side, right or left, then moves to the side to pass the ball to the wall. They have all kind of good ideas for individual work on the wall or by themselves. Then they talk about partner work where they're 10 feet apart, and then they progress to about 15 feet apart. And then the 2 people can try and keep the ball up in the air continuously. And then there's 7 more suggestions for partner work on passing. Then there's some partner work on serving and passing. And then you have group work. There's so much. This is such a valuable book with ideas on how to work on your lesson focus and guided practice for individual, partner, and group work, your lead-up activities. Then on page 7 and 11, they talk about the basic volleyball rules. And the book says the server covers the right back position in the second paragraph, and that's incorrect. The server can be anywhere in the back. They don't have to be to the right side. Yes, it is the server from the right back position, but that person does not have to serve from the right back position. They can stand anywhere on that back line. And then also now there's no such thing as a side out. So now every time the ball is served, one of the 2 teams is going to get a point. The major violations: touching the net during play, palming the ball, reaching over the net, and stepping over the center line. You have to act like there's an imaginary wall from the net straight down to the floor, and your feet cannot cross that line underneath the net during play, or that's a violation. Then on page 712, they start with the volleyball activities for developmental level 2, the beach ball volleyball and formal volleyball. It is great to teach the kids how to actually play with a volleyball net. My progression personally would be volley tennis for a week or so. And then if you want to progress to the actual beach ball volleyball with a volleyball net and play informal volleyball, that would be a good idea for 3rd and 4th grade. For developmental level 3, they talk about the pass and dig, where you form a circle and you're working on passing the ball to 5 or 8 students within your circle, and use a trainer ball and see if they can just keep it up and count how many you do. Then there's mini volleyball, a little lead-up game. On page 714, rotation mini volleyball, where you have teams of 3 and they rotate the teams and you only play to a certain number of points and constant rotation. You have your regulation volleyball game, and then you have a 3 and over volleyball game. I like that, where they have to hit it 3 times before it goes over. And there's others. They even have the 4 square volleyball game here on page 715. The volleyball skill test on 715, they talk about just a simplified serving skill test, and then a serving for accuracy, and then a wall volleying. This concludes our lectures for the semester.